I cheated on my husband, divorced, and thought I would forget him until I saw him smiling next to his daughter and his new wife. Everything fell apart for me, and I will regret it forever. When I met Darien, I was 26 years old and had an endless list of romantic mistakes behind me. Unstable men, empty promises, relationships with an expiration date. So when he came into my life like a serene breeze in the midst of chaos, I let myself be enveloped without hesitation. Darien was different. He was down to earth, had a sincere gaze and a tone of voice so calm that at first it exasperated me. He talked to me about goals, about order, about stability. He was a civil engineer, structured, methodical. He talked to me about building not just buildings, but a life together. I fell in love with his calmness, with how he seemed to have answers for everything. He was the type of man who remembered your important dates without alarms on his phone, who asked if you had eaten, who offered you his coat even when it was not cold. After so many ups and downs, his presence was a kind of relief, as if love could also be peaceful. We got married after a year and a half of dating. The wedding was simple, intimate, just as he wanted. We lived in a small apartment in the north of the city. We cooked together, made shopping lists, talked about future children, and for a while I was happy. I really was, but over time what once seemed like peace began to feel like monotony. We no longer talked about dreams, but about bills. We no longer kissed when leaving the house, we just said, "Take care." Routine became the center of everything, and I started to feel invisible. Not for lack of love, but for lack of excitement. I work as a graphic designer at a creative agency. My world is chaotic, full of spontaneous ideas, neon lights, and clients who change everything at the last minute. It is stressful, yes, but also stimulating. It was the only place where I felt I still had a voice, where they still saw me. It was in that environment that I met Gerald. He was the new art director from an international branch that collaborated with ours, tall, self-assured, with that air of irreverence that attracted glances effortlessly. From the first day, he treated me as if we had known each other before. He listened to me with exaggerated attention, made subtle jokes, told me my style was impeccable. Unlike Darien, who preferred to stay home watching documentaries, Gerald talked about escaping to Berlin for a week without notice, about electronic music, about nights that ended at dawn. He was unpredictable, and that hypnotized me. Work meetings became excuses to spend more time with him. The glances between the lines, the messages outside of work hours, the "thanks for your support today," with an implicit wink. I knew what was happening, and still, I did not stop. I liked how he made me feel alive, desired, special, as if the woman I was before marriage still existed under all the layers of responsibility and routine. Everything exploded one night after a big delivery. The team was celebrating in a downtown bar. Loud music, low lights, laughter, a few too many drinks. Gerald sat next to me, and for hours we talked as if no one else was there. He asked me about my dreams, about what made me feel trapped, and I, without measuring the consequences, told him what I had not told anyone, that I felt empty, that my marriage was good, but not happy. He looked at me as if he understood me, as if he knew exactly where to put his hand to press on the wound. And when he told me, "You should not feel that way at your age," I felt a strange fire in my stomach. He kissed me in the middle of the noise, without warning. A slow kiss, but charged with electricity. I did not stop him. I closed my eyes, I held on. We did not sleep together that night, but after that kiss, nothing was the same. I returned home as if I had committed a crime, and yet I did not feel guilty. I felt rage against myself, against Darien, against the life I had built, and that now seemed so alien to me. The next morning, I saw him making me coffee. He asked me if I slept well, he kissed me on the forehead, and at that moment I knew I was about to destroy him. I spent the next few weeks imagining my life without Darien, thinking about what I would do with my time, with my body, with my weekends. Gerald was still present, getting closer and closer, bolder and bolder. I no longer answered his messages with just words, but also with complicit silences. One random night, while we were watching a movie I was not paying attention to, I said it: "I want a divorce." There were no screams or insults, just a devastating silence. Darien paused the movie, turned to me, and with a broken voice asked, "Is there someone else?" I lied. "No, I just need space. I am not okay with myself." I saw him fall apart, but without losing his composure. He asked me to think about it, to go to therapy, not to make such a big decision because of a streak of dissatisfaction. He told me that he would change, that he would learn, that we should have a reset. I did not want a reset anymore. I wanted a new life. I left home a month later. I already had everything planned: the apartment, the contract, the move. Gerald helped me with everything. I felt powerful, empowered, free. The first weekend alone was a party. I went out with friends. I drank until dawn. I took selfies in front of the mirror with phrases like Rebirth, Chapter 9, This is me. I slept without alarms. I ate what I wanted. I shopped without consulting anyone. Gerald came over whenever he wanted, and, although it was not exclusive, I did not care. I liked the lightness of not giving explanations. Everything seemed perfect, but the silence at night was deeper than I expected. And some mornings I would wake up with a hole in my chest that I could not fill with anything. Gerald would leave early without a trace. The empty bed reminded me that perhaps I had traded freedom for loneliness, but I did not say it. Not yet. To the world I showed a smile. The mirror I simply avoided. Part 2. During the first few months of being single, I felt unstoppable. I went back to the gym. I changed my style of dress. I got a new haircut that everyone said looked daring, fresh, rejuvenated. Even some friends started to say that I looked happier, more alive, as if I had recovered something I had lost in the marriage. I posted photos of my outings, of my breakfasts with natural light, of my nights with Gerald. I never showed him directly, but I left clues. He would come, he would spend the night, we would laugh, sometimes we would cook. Everything was light, without commitments, without anyone having to be accountable. It was just what I wanted, was it not? But deep down inside me, something did not fit. Gerald was not Darien, and at first that seemed like a blessing, but over time I started to notice things I had previously overlooked: his excessive ego, his lack of interest in my emotions, his habit of talking about himself as if he were a misunderstood celebrity, his way of disappearing for days and returning as if nothing had happened. At first it did not bother me. I told myself that I wanted space too, that I was not looking for love. But one night, when Gerald fell asleep next to me, I found myself looking at him strangely. I felt like I was lying next to a stranger, that what we had was a kind of mirage, a quick fire, without foundations. Darien never tried to get me back. He wrote to me one last time weeks after the divorce, to tell me that he understood I needed my own path and that he hoped one day I would find the happiness I was looking for. He wished me the best. I blocked him, but his absence was loud. I thought of him when a song we used to sing in the car played. I thought of him when I got sick and no one asked if I needed soup. I thought of him when I came home from a long day and had no one to tell how it went. One day I dreamed of him. We were in our old kitchen. He was stirring something in the pot and talking to me in that calm voice of his. I woke up with wet eyes. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if he also dreamed of me or if he had already rebuilt his life. That possibility hurt me more than I was willing to accept. Over time, what I once found charming about Gerald began to annoy me. His constant need for validation, his contempt for everything conventional, his inability to listen without interrupting, but above all his coldness. He was not abusive or cruel, he was absent, even when he was present. One night I told him that I had seen a friend who was pregnant and that I had been excited to think about having a child someday. Gerald burst out laughing and said, "You with a baby. I thought you were more free than that." His sentence hit me like a bucket of icy water. Not because of the laughter, but because of how he dismissed a desire I was barely daring to acknowledge. I did not answer him, but something inside me broke at that moment. I began to feel that I was with someone who did not see me as a complete woman, but as an edited version of what he expected from me, as if I had to fit into his world to be interesting. And that is when I realized that I had not freed myself, I had only changed cages. One Friday night, while I was looking at old photos out of pure masochism, I received an unexpected message from a former coworker. She asked me if what she had heard was true, that Darien had gotten married. I replied with a simple, How do you know that? She sent me a screenshot of a post, an intimate wedding in a garden surrounded by warm lights. There he was, Darien, in a suit, smiling with a slim, brown-haired woman on his arm. And what struck me the most was his gaze. He had the same calmness as always, but something more, a glow I never saw in him when he was with me. I closed the phone without replying anything. I felt a pang in my chest, anger, sadness, jealousy. I got up, went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the dark. I did not cry, but the silence was as heavy as concrete. I told myself it was normal, that we were over, that he had the right to rebuild his life, but something in me was slowly crumbling because I was still stuck in the idea of living for myself, but he had already moved on. Without me. A week later, another friend wrote to me. She told me she had seen Darien in the Central Park walking with a woman and a baby stroller. At first I thought it was an exaggeration, but my curiosity got the better of me. I went to his new wife's profile, which was public. There was Darien hugging a newborn baby girl, with her eyes closed and a peaceful smile on his face. The photo had a simple caption, "Welcome, Alba. Dad is always going to take care of you." And it was at that moment that it all came crashing down on me. I had not just lost him, I had abandoned him. I rejected him when he loved me most. I robbed him of the opportunity to be a father with me, and yet he had found it with someone else, a better one who stayed. I could not keep looking. I turned off the phone, I threw myself on the bed, and I cried for the first time in a long time. Not out of rage, not out of anger. I cried for what I had let go, for what I had scorned, for what I could never get back. Part 3. After seeing the photo of Darien with his daughter, I could not help but check his profile every night. I became a silent spectator of a life that no longer belonged to me. Each post was like a soft, but constant slap. His new wife Camila, as I saw in the comments, shared images full of tenderness, family outings, picnics, natural smiles, the kind of moments that Darien used to wish for and that he could never experience with me. It was not just envy, it was something deeper. It was having captured in images everything I had discarded as if it had no value, everything he offered me. And I rejected it in search of an illusion. At night, Gerald hardly stayed over anymore. He said he had meetings, trips, that he needed space. And I said nothing, I just turned off the lights and hugged the pillow, imagining what it would have been like to see Darien rocking my daughter with that patient love he had in his hands. The silence reminded me that I had chosen this, that no one had imposed it on me, that the freedom I had longed for so much now suffocated me. The breaking point came one Sunday night. Gerald arrived unannounced. As he used to do, he was drunk. He came in, he threw his things on the floor, and he poured himself a beer without saying hello. He glanced at me and asked, "Are you and the engineer still in touch?" I was surprised. I looked at him confused. "Darien, no." "Why do you say that?" "Because lately your head is somewhere else." More dull, older, he laughed with disdain. I jumped out of my chair as if propelled by a spring. "Excuse me." "Come on, do not get offended. I am telling the truth. You used to be fun, now you seem like a nostalgic old lady. You spend your time sighing as if you had been left at the altar." I fell silent. For the first time, I did not know how to react. It hurt. Not just because of the words, but because they were true. I had become a gray version of myself. I got lost in an attempt to rediscover myself, but the only thing I achieved was to empty myself. That night I did not sleep. I sat in front of the mirror and I looked at myself for hours. I saw myself without filters, without makeup, with dark circles under my eyes, with that hidden sadness that no elegant clothes can disguise. And I asked myself, what did I do? Weeks later, as I was walking through a shopping mall, I saw him. He was in a coffee shop with Camila and little Alba in his arms. He was feeding her with a small spoon while he smiled. Camila was laughing, taking pictures. It was such a mundane scene, but so beautiful. I stood a few meters away, invisible. I felt a lump in my throat. I did not know whether to approach or run away, but Darien saw me, and when he did, he smiled at me. A kind, warm, but distant smile. I approached with clumsy steps. He stood up to greet me. He hugged me carefully. Camila politely greeted me as well. And although her gesture was cordial, I could see the discomfort in her eyes. "What a surprise," Darien said softly. "How are you?" I lied. "Good, working a lot, you know." He nodded. He did not ask for more. I looked at the baby. She had his eyes, his long eyelashes, his calmness. "She is beautiful," I said, holding back tears. "Thank you. Her name is Alba. I am glad to see you are well, Darien." "Really?" And I said it with sincerity, even though I was breaking inside. That same night, sitting in front of my computer, I began to write him a letter that I never sent. "Darien, I do not know if this will have any value to you now, but I need to say it. I was wrong. I did not know how to value calmness, stability, real love. I thought I needed something more, but in reality I had everything and I did not see it. I am not trying to come back. I am not writing to you with the intention of breaking anything. I just needed you to know that when I saw you with your daughter, I understood everything. I understood how much I failed you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I hope one day you can forgive me for being blind. Sometimes the greatest freedom is having someone who stays. With respect, the woman who did not know how to take care of you." I did not send it. I saved it in a hidden folder, but it was my way of closing the wound, of letting out what had been rotting in my chest, of accepting that Darien was not the one who should come back, it was I who should leave. Shortly after, Gerald disappeared. Literally. He did not answer calls, he did not reply to messages. I found out through third parties that he had returned to his country. Not a goodbye, not a thank you, nothing. I found myself alone, without a partner, without a family, without the love I had despised, and without the adventure I thought would make me happy. My apartment was a museum of ego full of beautiful things, but without a soul, without laughter, without plans. And so, for the first time in my life, I understood that I had made the worst mistake of all. To assume that boring love was not love. To think that someone who does not shine like fire cannot warm the soul. Part 4 and final. After Gerald's disappearance, I was left alone with my reflection. The mornings were long, the days were identical, and the nights were a punishment. I no longer had anyone to write to me, "Did you have lunch?" nor anyone to hug me from behind in the kitchen, nor anyone to wait for me on the couch to watch an unimportant series. Everything I had wished for, my freedom, my space, my independence, had become a prison without bars. I tried to fill the void with work, with occasional outings, with small material indulgences, but nothing worked because it was not the present that hurt me, it was the past, that past I had scorned, thinking that happiness looked like what they sold in movies or on social media. And no, happiness was not adrenaline or drama. It was knowing that someone cared for you in silence, even when you did not ask for it. It was knowing that someone loved you with constancy, not with fireworks. A year after that fleeting encounter at the shopping mall, I decided to visit my mother's grave. I had not done so since before the divorce. I felt guilty. She had always told me that Darien was a good man, that sometimes we women confuse boring with safe. I knelt in front of her tombstone, I left some flowers, and without realizing it I started talking to her out loud. "You were right, Mom. I let my ego get the best of me. I wanted to live fast, and now all I have is a lot of silence." I cried like I had not cried since I was a child, and just as I was wiping my tears I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. It was Darien. He was not alone. Alba was walking by his side, holding his hand. Camila was waiting a few meters away, next to another niche. We looked at each other without words. Alba greeted me with the innocence of someone who knows nothing of wounds or broken pasts. I returned her smile with a lump in my throat. Darien just nodded as if acknowledging my pain. Then he left. It was then that I knew there would be no going back, that what I broke forever. That night, on impulse, I wrote to Darien from a new number. I just put, "Hello, I do not expect anything. I just wanted to tell you that I am sorry for everything, that I am glad you are happy." He read the message, but he never replied. I do not blame him. Sometimes the wisest thing to do is to leave on read what does not need a reply. Time passed. I left that apartment full of empty memories. I moved to a smaller, simpler, more real one. I started therapy. I stopped looking in others for what I lacked in myself. Little by little I began to rebuild myself, not to get him back, but to not lose myself again. I became a volunteer at a children's library. Helping children to read connected me with something pure. It made me feel useful. And although there are still days when I see a couple walking hand in hand and my chest hurts, I no longer hate myself, I no longer judge myself, I just take a deep breath and I go on. Darien never spoke to me again, not a single word. And I understand, not all mistakes have a remedy. Some just teach. I was not the victim of this story, I was the cause. I acknowledge it, and perhaps that is the hardest part to accept, that the fault is mine and that the consequences too, but I learned the hard way, late. And although I can never hug him again, although he will never call me by my name with that serene affection, I hope that in some corner of his memory there is at least one beautiful memory of us, of the good days, of what we once were before I destroyed it by believing I could have more without valuing it enough. It has been 3 years since I last saw Darien. The last time I heard from him, I also learned that they moved to another city. Camila got a new job and Alba is already school-aged. Sometimes I see their photos through mutual friends' accounts that I never blocked. And although it does not hurt like it used to, sometimes it still hurts, because there are wounds that do not bleed, but heal with an eternal itch. Living reminders of what was and what we did not know how to care for.